So we give you a time, get your hopes up, and then but that's how it goes. So welcome. I hope you guys have had a fantastic week. I hope your Friday is going excellent. You know, for some people it's the best day of the week. For other people it's the worst. For me, it's kind of somewhere in the middle. But anyway, thank you for joining. Today we have a very special guest, Mr. Corey Lunatic Schwartz. He's usually behind the scenes running everything.
Right.
But I decided, it would be, we had kind of a mix-up with the guests earlier in the week, and we're like, you know what? We should just, kind of have a thing. Let's see how it goes. We have, he's usually behind the scenes, but he does so much in the industry that's relevant to what we do. I thought he'd be just the perfect person to have on.
Oh, thanks, Matt. This should be a lot of fun.
Oh, well, yeah, you're welcome. So, tell me a little bit about, because obviously you own Lunatic, and you do a lot of real estate investing, so you're not new to the industry. Tell me a little bit about what got you started, not just with loans, but real estate in general, because I know you have your hands kind of everywhere.
So back in 1995, I had sold a large software development and publishing company, and I was sitting on cash and had no idea what to do with it. I didn't like the volatility of the stock market. It just scared me. We worked really hard to earn that money, and we had this feeling that we had to protect our nest egg. So throwing money at the stock market just didn't fit my personality. Later on, I found a friend who was doing real estate investing, primarily lending on private money loans. And so by roughly the very early 2000s, I had started doing that too. By 2003, we had lent out so much money that we had to bring in friends and family money, we had to start a fund, we had to go get licensed, and it just kind of blew up from there. So that's how I got my start in real estate and lending.
That's a really cool story about exponential growth, where you kind of have that idea and roll with it, and all of a sudden it blows up and it's almost bigger than you can handle, but you manage to kind of figure it out.
We tripped over ourselves many times, as every entrepreneur does. One of my good entrepreneurial friends told me that if you're not making mistakes regularly, you're not trying hard enough. So
no, I totally agree with that.
It makes a lot of sense.
It's profound, actually. So tell me a little bit about some of the people that inspired you early on to do real estate, because having that, coming from that big lump sum of money and looking for something safe to do it in, did you kind of come up with the idea on your own? I know the internet wasn't as proficient as it is now. Did you have some people that were like, hey, this might be a good idea, get into lending, get into some private money?
Just one friend that was doing it. Back then, there was practically no one doing private money. Now it seems like, there's a new private lender on every corner. It's worse than Starbucks. Back in the late 90s and early 2000s, we were charging 15% and 5 points. The market is now in the 10% and 2-point range. And primarily that's driven by competition.
Gotcha. So that seems to be an area of the industry that you focus on a lot, is this private lending. Because I know you do a lot of the convention on the FHA, because we do them together all the time. But we also do a lot of this private money stuff, and it's really interesting how it works, because it allows a lot wider net for you to cast in order to qualify people.
It does. When you're not selling a security on Wall Street, it's easier to make exceptions and adjustments. And, if it's an owner-occupied property, we still have Dodd-Frank to deal with and all the disclosure and lending laws. They're manageable, but, when you're talking about investment property, the doors open wider.
You know, it's interesting that you mentioned that because I have a lot of realtors that will ask me specifically, you know, I want this person to be qualified primary residence. I want them to be able to buy a primary residence. And I say, well, that's not an option. It's a little bit different. I think that'd be a really interesting topic. What are some of the differences, some of the hoops you have to go through in order to do a loan primary than to go through the investment route?
Sure. To do a primary residential loan, the biggest obstacle is Dodd-Frank's ability to repay rules. Different from pre-crash, the ability to repay rule says that we have to verify a borrower's ability to repay a loan. That's a dramatic departure from the way loans had been done previously. You could, prior to Dodd-Frank, you could tell your lender almost anything. You know, it may not have been truthful, but the lender wasn't required by law to verify the truth and correctness of what you were demonstrating to them. So now, since we do have to prove that, we have to have bank statements, we have to have profit and loss statements, they have to be self-employed. You know, there's a myriad of disclosures and consumer protection laws that you have to navigate when you're doing a primary residential loan.
That's really interesting because you kind of came from that era. You lived through the big crash we had in 2007. Yep. You were in the industry, you stayed in the industry, you continued, you succeeded in the industry. Yep. What was some of the changes in, you know, regulation and how they affected you and your business more in that early on phases?
It was a scary time to be alive and to be a lender. We were essentially at ground zero. You know, we were the epicenter of the crash for the entire country. So Dodd-Frank came into existence, I believe, at the very end of 2010 and going into 2011. And at that point, Dodd-Frank was 2,600 pages of new laws and regulations, and I had read them repeatedly, or at least the portions that applied to lending. And by the end of 2010, I couldn't figure out what the government wanted us to do. A strict reading of the law sounded like we shouldn't be doing any form of private lending at all, or at least we couldn't do it in a compliant manner. So at the end of 2010, I turned in my banking licenses. I shut down. I joined a couple of friends, and we went out and bought, I don't know, $60 or $70 million of distressed assets and rehabbed them and sold them. And, you know, we did phenomenally well, but I couldn't figure out what Dodd-Frank wanted us to do. But I kept reading the law. I kept talking to our attorneys. By 2014, we had figured out how to originate a loan compliantly. And we went and got relicensed. You know, now we're licensed in 5 or 6 states, 20-odd loan officers. We've grown a lot since then. In fact, we were named by Inc. magazine one of the fastest growing companies in the country.
That's awesome. I remember when I was learning about Lonatic, I found that out. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, it's cool. I hadn't really tried to do something like that, but we've got an incredible group of originators here that are dedicated to doing the best job they can for their clients.
So tell me a little bit about, because I know other than running this awesome and expanding company, I know you do a lot of real estate investing personally, and just in your personal portfolio you have quite a bit going on. So for our, because a lot of people that watch our live stream, as you know, a lot of people are in real estate, their business is real estate, they invest in real estate, they do loans, something along those lines. or they want to invest in real estate, or they want to be more involved in this industry. What are some of the things you look for? Because one of the hardest things about being a real estate investor is finding a property. What are some parameters you put out there for yourself, for someone who's bought and sold countless properties? What are some of the things that you make it easy for you to rule certain properties out and level certain properties higher up on your list?
So one of the first rules that we use internally is we never acquire a property where we're not going to see 1% of the value of the property as rent, assuming we're talking about single-family residential property. So if you're talking about a $100,000 property, we want to see $1,000 a month come in as rent for that property. As long as we're hitting that number, we're going to buy. If we're below that, the decision becomes more difficult. Are we going to see appreciation in the property, or are we making an appreciation play? There's a myriad of other ways we can look at the analysis, but if we're just looking for single-family rental property, we're targeting a 1% amount of rent, 1% of the value of the property as rent. If we can't support that, then we're a seller. In Phoenix currently, we can't achieve those numbers, so we're basically out of the market. We're selling in the Phoenix market rather than buying.
Interesting. So what are some markets that are meeting that kind of goal or that spec?
We like the Cleveland market. That's got lots and lots of low value real estate. They're getting north of 1% as their rental income. Memphis, there are suburbs through Memphis that are really attractive. There are parts of St. Louis. I think there's some areas of Oklahoma that also hit those same parameters. We were just recently up in Indiana. We've got an investor that's buying pretty heavily out there. All around Indianapolis, there's great property. So, we're looking at primarily at the Midwest as investment vehicles right now.
So out here, it's just because we have so many people coming here, especially from California, because of how
the inventory in the Phoenix market is so tight. The last number I heard was in the 6,000 to 8,000 range, which is hardly 1 month's supply of inventory. So when the market's that tight, the prices of the property are going to start to rise.
Absolutely, just because we just have so many people coming here. I'm sure you've noticed, just running this branch that you've had a lot of people coming in with current addresses in California, or current addresses, and I actually have someone coming in from New Mexico. So it's just it's a great state to if you own property, but maybe getting into investing in new property might be a little bit more difficult out here in Arizona.
Sure. I think it's a terrific area to live in. I like that it's a smaller city. When I was initially looking here, I was coming from the New York metro area, and we were still looking for a city, and it supplied everything that we were looking for.
So I'm going to change gears a little bit because I want to go back to some of the questions I had scripted up in my head here. I know I haven't actually had a chance to speak with on the slides. We're pretty new. Is a business owner, and one of the most interesting things a business owner does is they hire on new people and they hire on new everything. You hire on everyone on your company. From loan officers to HR and everyone in between. So what were some of the challenges, opening a new branch, getting in getting in people? Did you have, an instant key on, eye on, who you wanted to hire, or did you have a pretty good eye for talent?
I gotta tell you, hiring
You hired
people.
me, so yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, with you, we had met, I don't know, 6 or 8, 12 months earlier, and I knew culturally you'd be a great fit in the company. And, I had my friends going after you. We recruited you hard. Mostly because we knew you'd fit here really, really well. And I think if you're growing a company, that's something that's really important. You want people who work well together. And I must admit that hiring has been one of the most difficult things to do. We had used LinkedIn for a while. They have a really great platform. But the people that we were hiring out of LinkedIn were of the lowest quality that we were finding. The best hires have all been through networking.
Interesting. Never would have guessed that LinkedIn wouldn't have been a fantastic connection, but
Yeah.
Because you think there's all, that's like the business of Facebook, I guess you could say.
Yeah. When you're hiring in mass or trying to identify a specific kind of person, it's probably a great platform. But just to hire general loan officers, I didn't have a lot of success with it.
Yeah, it's got to be the one of the things that I dread as my business kind of grows is having to bring on other people. I have assistants that I do on a per file, but as I kind of grow, I feel like I'm getting to that point where I might need someone more, and it's a scary perspective, hiring people. So it's always cool to get someone who's done it a while, their perspective on it.
Yeah, I mean, I would highly recommend hiring from your circle. People that you get to know their work, their work ethic, their culture. That is by far the best way to hire.
Absolutely. So tell me this, what were, because I always like to talk about inspirational stories on these live channels, like, what was the best this, what was the best that. So 2019 just wrapped up.
Yep.
What would you say was your most interesting, real estate related transaction that happened in 2019? Whether it was a personal buy, flip, or a personal rental, or maybe a loan that you closed.
We actually live streamed the property. One of our investors had picked it up. It was either a death or an arrest or something caused the property to go into disrepair and ultimately into foreclosure. The lead for the property came to the investor through an attorney that he had known, and ultimately, after, I don't know, it was probably 4 or 5 months of chasing the property, he finally got it. He got it for an incredibly low amount of money. He got it basically for the value of the dirt.
Wow.
And he's now rehabbing that property. All the rehab numbers came in under what he expected.
That's always awesome.
He'll probably double or triple his cash investment into that property. It was just an amazing deal. We're the lender on the property, and yeah, it's a blast.
And that was here, was that here in Arizona, or was
No, that was in Indiana.
That was in Indiana, gotcha.
Yeah.
How interesting.
Yeah.
So, no.
It's really interesting as I look back through all the properties that we've been involved in. It seems like the money is made on the buy rather than the rehab or the sale. You can be really efficient in your purchase of shingles or wood, but you're not going to be that efficient. The real value is going to be on the buy. You have to negotiate it there. You have to be into the property right, and then, dispose of it at its highest value. You and I were talking about a property not so long ago that I had purchased here in Phoenix, and you were scared of that particular property because we were carrying it, holding out for the highest dollar.
Oh yeah.
And your position was, I wouldn't want to have to hold the property, but I knew I was into the property so well that we could afford to hold it for an extra 60 or 90 days while we got the best offer possible.
And it's that experienced mind and that experienced hand that made you the extra money on that deal.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, we did a beautiful rehab. There's very few similar properties in the market. It will sell for top dollar. It's really interesting. Open Door, Zillow, and OfferPad had also offered us money for that property. We'll probably clear between $30,000 and $50,000 more on a fairly small sale than any of those companies were willing to offer us.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, you have to trust your realtor, you have to trust your rehab teams. If you screw up on any of those points, you won't get the value that you're entitled to. But, I don't know too many people that can afford to leave, $20,000, $30,000, $50,000 on the table selling to an iBuyer. Yeah, I mean, it just doesn't make sense. You for the average American, they have to work, half a year, an entire year, just to earn that money back.
Yep.
And that's not including any expenses. Why would you just give it away for a little bit of convenience? It doesn't seem to make sense to me.
Yeah, I don't think people quite understand what that whole, isn't you brought up the iBuyer thing. People don't get, when they give you an offer on that property, they're not giving you a competitive offer. They're giving you a convenient offer, a very convenient offer that's, way lower than what that property's worth. And people think that the offer that they're giving you is, really competitive. And they're like, if I put it on the market, maybe I'll get a couple $1,000 here or there. But you're talking big percentage margins that you're giving up with these iBuyers. You're talking 20, 30, 40, 50% off of the value that, just because they're willing to sign a check immediately. If you own a property like that, reach out to an experienced real estate agent. Talk to an agent. Ask them, how long is it going to take to sell this property? What do you think we should list it at? Or if you have a timeline, say I want to sell the property in 30 days. What do we need to price it at? I need to sell it in 60 days. What do we need to price it at? There's ways to, and if you don't have access to a good real estate professional, just drop a comment or send either of us an IM or something. Yep. We have loads of people who are very experienced in the industry who can show you exactly how to get the most out of your home, especially now because it's such a seller's market here in Arizona.
Yep. Great point.
But my last question to you, and it's the last question I ask everyone. It's always the longest one. It's always kind of the most interesting. Is now that you're here, and you've kind of arrived in a way in the industry. If you could go back to yourself right when you sold that software company and you got your lump sum of money and you first heard about this whole private money thing and you were just getting your feet wet, if you could have a conversation with you from day one from today, what would that look like? What would that entail? What's some advice you give to yourself? What are some things you wish maybe hey, this and this would have been better, or where would you be with that?
Wow, it's a great question. There's so many different ways to go with it. I think if I were giving myself advice, now versus then, or then versus now, it would probably be stay true to yourself, trust the people around you, hire the best, work with the best. You know, there's no room to work with anybody who is not absolutely top-notch and dedicated to their profession. Those are the people that, the ones that have been marginal have been our largest liability. So it's all about the people you're working with.
Interesting. Yeah,
Yeah, you've had some experiences with that too.
Yeah, had some interesting ones. But I love the saying, you're the average of the top 5 people you spend the majority of your time with.
It's absolutely true. Look at your circle, look at your friends. That's who you are.
Your circle filled with people eating potato chips and drinking soda on the couch watching Netflix, or are you hanging out with, people that are hustlers doing open houses, they're, they're at the office, they're taking phone calls, they're taking that 9 o'clock application at night.
That's right.
That's how it is. The client called me last night, or 2 nights ago, 10:30 at night. Half-hour conversation. Had to go outside because, the walls are thin and everyone's asleep in the rooms. And I'm like, what am I? It's freezing cold outside. So I said, hold on a minute, get my jacket on, my boxers, put my sandals on, go outside in the front, take the call. But that's how you got to do. You got to see who's your circle. Who do you spend the most time with.
That's so true. And I'm taking those calls, well into the night.
Text messages at midnight. If I text him, I can't access the shares drive. It's like 11:30 at night, and he'll be like, "Yeah, I got it. It's done."
Yeah,
he's better than one of the people I look up to.
Yeah, and a lot of our realtors, the people that we work with regularly, are exactly the same way. They're texting me 3 o'clock in the morning. They got up, they had to go to the bathroom or something. They immediately had a thought, and I'm there to respond.
Oh, I can imagine who that could be.
I can't, yeah. Exactly.
They're the best though. They those guys are, and their team that they're growing is pretty, pretty incredible.
Yeah, the guys at EXP are top notch.
Cheers to EXP. They do a good job with us. It's cool to get to build that circle and build that group. People who really want to better themselves and make a better life for themselves and really prove that it is about the hard work. It's not necessarily about where you started. It's kind of about where you're ending up. And it's not about how you fall. It's kind of how you bounce back. It's not every failure meant to be a loss.
Yep.
Kind of thing. That positive attitude and motivation towards going forward.
Yeah. In thinking about it, one of the other things that I'd probably say to my younger self is delegate. Use the virtual assistants, hire people to get stuff off your desk. That would be great advice to my younger self.
Because now you can focus on more of those heavy green activities, those real money making. Because all the paper pushing and all the stuff that goes along with not just loans like I have to deal with, but also running a business and investing in multiple properties. A lot of paperwork, and that's a light green activity. But you really want to be in that dark green activity, looking at putting offers in on properties. Going out there and putting off, writing loans, doing stuff that's directly making you the money. And it's
if you're not focused on earning that dollar and tasks that will get you to that next level, you're wasting your time. Delegate all that crap.
Absolutely, delegate where possible. A lot of great leaders and entrepreneurs that I've had the pleasure of speaking with or reading their books. Delegating is always a point of interest. If it's not in the first 2 things, it's definitely in the top 5 for pretty much everyone I know, from John Maxwell to who did I just reread a fantastic book. Let me actually grab his name. I don't want to butcher it. I don't want to butcher it on our live stream here.
Do we have to cue
Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill.
Napoleon Hill. That's a terrific book.
I always, his first name always gets me, then I remember Napoleon Dynamite. So
No, that's a terrific book. There's
delegating is one of the things that he talks about in there.
Yep.
How to, really manage your time.
Yeah, there's another book, very similar. I think it's a predecessor to Napoleon Hill, Richest Man in Babylon.
Oh, I love that book.
That's a terrific book.
Fantastic book. I love the audio's only like 3 hours and change long, so I'll get through it. Sometimes I'll listen to it for a couple of days.
Audible.
Yeah, because I have such a long commute. If you don't know, I live all the way out in Mesa near Apache Junction, and then I come out to the Phoenix area to work. So I'm in the car a couple hours a day. So I got to think of something constructive to do.
Yeah, Audible's awesome.
Audible's just that. We're not sponsored by Audible, but Audible, if you want to sponsor us, you can just drop a comment below. We would love to put an Audible banner up here somewhere, Mortgage Minute on Audible. Let me know if you'd like that. If you think we'd be a good, podcast to go on Audible, maybe we'll figure that out. But
Right on.
But yeah, man, thank you so much for coming, and I hope, maybe we'll make you, we'll be having you on more often, just because there's so much that, that we can talk about, so much experience that you have, we could go on for weeks. But thank you so much for coming on. It was an absolute pleasure. It was great getting to learn from you. I'm sure everyone watching, just, all the nuggets are just, everyone's trying to stash them away in their pockets.